Tonight on Bridge City News, with just days to go in the federal election campaign, Liberal leader Justin Trudeau accuses the Conservatives of running one of the dirtiest campaigns that Canada has ever seen, while Andrew Scheer targets Trudeau's ethics record. Alberta Health Services has declared an outbreak of whooping cough in parts of southern Alberta, including Lethbridge. And police in the York, Ontario region say they've arrested 31 people after an investigation into human trafficking and organized crime.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Paul Arthur.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Alberta Health Services has declared an outbreak of pertussis, or whooping cough, for parts of southern Alberta, including the communities of Lethbridge, Raymond, and Lethbridge County.
We're asking individuals to sort of have heightened surveillance, to be aware about whooping cough, same as all our physicians and our emergency departments, because it's a little bit of an interesting disease. As I said earlier, some have mild disease, and sometimes you bring a child in, the child seems okay, and there's a history of a child really coughing and turning blue and or vomiting after coughing, yet right at that moment it may look okay. So really to raise awareness and to make sure that people seek medical attention when there's an ongoing cough.
People who suspect they or a family member may be sick with pertussis are advised to stay at home and call a physician or HealthLink 811 before seeking medical care. Southern Albertans now have more resources for mental health concerns. The Canadian Mental Health Association is offering a series of no-charge recovery college programs, which range from 2 to 8 weeks long. The courses are open to anyone 16 years of age and up, but there will also be courses for youth. The plan is to expand the program to outlying communities in the future. Currently, the courses will be held at the Lethbridge CMHA office downtown. 1 in 5 Canadians suffer from mental health problems at some point in their life. Hal Roberts had the opportunity to chat with psychologist Dr. Greg Jantz on the issue of mental health.
So when we talk about extremes, we're seeing such things as high levels of addiction, high levels of anxiety, and it's a real increase. In certain ages, we're seeing 12 to 17, especially high levels of depression, anxiety, and unfortunately, men ages about 50 and above is the second highest growing rate of depression and suicide.
We will have the entire interview in the second half of today's newscast. More construction got underway today at the Northside's Legacy Park.
In Legacy Park, we've started a few construction projects. The spray park has been under construction for a little bit, but they're still on site. Right beside to that, to the east side, we've just started construction of the new community pavilion building. And that includes some community rental space, a concession, washrooms, change rooms for the spray park. And just across the parking lot, there's going to be a new picnic shelter, a group picnic shelter that can be booked by groups that want to have larger events.
Construction is expected to wrap up by the end of summer 2020. Logan Boulet's legacy will be honored this weekend at the ATB Centre. For a second straight year, Lethbridge Minor Hockey will host a tournament in remembrance of the former Humboldt Bronco. Ainsley O'Reilly explains why this tournament means so much for the hockey community.
The late Logan Boulet's parents, Bernie and Toby, will be dropping the puck at the second annual Logan Boulet Minor Hockey Tournament. For organizers, naming the tournament after him was a no-brainer.
Logan played for the team, and it was an opportunity to remember him. I obviously have a connection with him. Logan was my nephew. So with that, when the opportunity came to name the tournament after him, we jumped at it.
It's a huge thing for everyone in the hockey community here. Anything that has to do with Logan. Personally, from a personal point, I never really had a big impact on Logan's hockey career. I did have him affiliated to my midget AAA team when I did coach in 2012. He went on to play 15-year-olds that year, and that's why this is so special.
8 different teams from all over the country will be at the ATB Centre October 17th through 19th. Every single player will be in the 15-year age bracket, a time that coaches and organizers say is critical for a young player's development and future career.
It's a unique group because it's one age group, but it's also the year before a lot of these kids move on to play junior hockey, they have to make a lot of decisions at 15, whether they want to pursue a college route, whether they want to go the junior route.
That's where the most growth physically, mentally, and in their skill development is done, because of mostly in growth.
The M15 team hoisted the first place trophy last season, and this year's squad is looking to defend the title. For Bridge City News, I'm Ainsley O'Reilly.
Medicine Hat will receive a boost to its economy with the Calgary-based BHE Canada announcing that it will build a $200 million 117-megawatt wind farm just southwest of the city next year. Berkshire Hathaway Energy also owns AltaLink, the company which supplies electricity to more than 85% of the Alberta population. The project is expected to produce enough energy to supply the equivalent of 79,000 homes. The Alberta government has introduced Bill 16, the Public Lands Modernization Amendment Act, which will change the rent and fees ranchers pay government for the use of public lands. The changes would be phased in over 5 years to help ranchers adjust to new rates after 25 years of frozen rates. The bill is also designed to guard the beef industry from the threat of U.S. tariffs, as some states view the current fees as a government subsidy for Alberta ranchers. The provincial government says it won't seek a meeting with 16-year-old Swedish climate activist Greta Thunberg when she visits on Friday. Environment Minister Jason Nixon says instead he hopes Thunberg takes the time to talk to people to learn how Alberta has some of the cleanest and greenest oil and gas rules in the world. NDP opposition leader Rachel Notley urged the government to meet with Thunberg as part of a larger commitment to embrace climate change as a reality and to then do something about it. Solar panel owners in Saskatchewan won't get as much credit on their Sask power bills under a new net metering program as they did before. A new program takes effect November 1st, and customers will be able to use solar to offset their own power use at the retail rate. But they will only get 7.5 cents per kilowatt hour credit on their bills, rather than the 14 cents in the previous program, and they won't be reimbursed for equipment. Dustin Duncan, the minister responsible for Sask Power, says the idea is to create a green energy option while also avoiding passing on the cost of the program to people who can't afford solar panels on their own. A month after post-tropical storm Dorian knocked out power to 411,000 Nova Scotia power customers, the utility is bracing for another strong storm. The company says high wind gusts and heavy rain is in the forecast for tomorrow, which could bring down trees already weakened by Dorian. The utility says it is activating its Emergency Operations Center at noon tomorrow and is preparing personnel and resources. Police in the York region say they've arrested 31 people after an investigation into human trafficking and organized crime. Investigators say they have laid more than 300 charges after searching more than 30 locations in the Toronto area and Quebec last week. Their investigation began last October after 2 women contacted police when they tried to escape a human trafficking ring. Police have identified 12 victims and determined more than 30 women in the sex trade were linked to that ring. A noisy, weeks-long strike at 4 luxury hotels in downtown Vancouver may be over. Unite Here Local 40 released a statement announcing a tentative contract agreement had been reached yesterday with the Westin Bayshore, Hyatt Regency, Pinnacle Harbourfront, and Four Seasons hotels. It says a strike continues at the Rosewood Hotel, Georgia. The union says the 4-year agreement, representing about 1,500 workers, is groundbreaking and secures significant wage increases, protects workers from sexual harassment, and boosts their job security. As part of a broader shift toward corporate inclusivity, several Canadian airlines have either stopped or are considering no longer including the phrase "ladies and gentlemen" in their in-flight announcements. Air Canada and Air Transat both say they are amending onboard announcements to replace gendered language with non-binary terminology, while WestJet and Sunwing say they still include the phrase but are also discussing a change. In June, Canadian officials began allowing travelers to choose gender designations outside the traditional male and female categories on their passports, with an X for unspecified gender. Meanwhile, the Toronto Public Library says it has an obligation to protect free speech and is refusing to cancel an event featuring a speaker who has made controversial remarks about transgender women. Megan Murphy runs the website Feminist Current and has written that allowing men to identify as women endangers women and undermines women's rights. An online petition with more than 2,200 signatures argues that the library is providing a platform for Murphy to spread hate speech. Tomorrow is more than just the first anniversary of Canada's legalization of recreational marijuana. It's also the first day of legalization for the production and sale of cannabis derivatives, such as edibles and vaping extracts. However, the products won't be available until mid-December because producers need to give 60 days notice to Health Canada. Rick Unruh is a man who has written a book on the tremendous difficulties he has encountered in life. I had the opportunity to speak with him on how he managed to come out on the winning side.
Are we willing to surrender that deep, dark hurt, wound, that thing in our past that we don't want to go back to? Because God knew that was going to be a stumbling block if I didn't deal with it. So that was the key pivotal, self-surrender. And when we do that, God can begin to allow us to dream again.
That entire interview will be coming up in the second half of today's program. Liberal leader Justin Trudeau campaigned in Montreal today, accusing the Conservatives of running one of the dirtiest, nastiest campaigns that Canada has ever seen. Trudeau went on to say that Canadians are saddened to see some parties running polarizing and negative campaigns using tactics imported from other countries.
We are, I think all of us as Canadians, a little saddened to see the polarizing, negative nature of the campaign being run by some of our opponents, which is directly imported from the challenging electoral situations we see in fellow democracies around the world. We also know that Andrew Scheer and the Conservatives are choosing to play very divisive games and to use the politics of fear and division to try and get Canadians to vote for them. And I think Conservatives need to continue to be called out on the nasty negative campaign that they're running because Canadians deserve better. And yes, we need to continue to develop the right tools that both protect freedom of expression and ensure that Canadians can make informed choices in election times. But fundamentally, it comes down to Canadians themselves. Will we make the right choice on Monday? Will we choose fear, division, and austerity? Or will we choose to continue to move forward in a way that has grown our economy, lifted people out of poverty, and fought climate change in the real way for the first time that our government has had over the past 4 years?
Former U.S. President Barack Obama today tweeted his support for Justin Trudeau, saying the world needs progressive leadership. At a campaign stop in Essex, Ontario, Andrew Scheer promised reforms to ethics and accountability laws to address what he says are loopholes that allow Justin Trudeau to violate ethics laws but face little penalty.
In just 5 days, Canadians will head to the polls and decide whether or not Justin Trudeau deserves to remain Prime Minister. And over the last 4 years, he has demonstrated time and time again that he is unworthy of that office. He is unworthy of the trust Canadians placed in him 4 years ago to respect taxpayer dollars and safeguard our democracy against corruption. His ongoing scandals and cover-ups have caused Canadians to lose faith in the integrity of their government. For breaking the Conflict of Interest Act not only once, but twice, Justin Trudeau faced absolutely no consequences. That's because there are no consequences attached under the law. Now, Canadians expect accountability from their leaders, and that's what I will deliver. And that's why today I'm pleased to announce that as part of our 100-day action plan, a new Conservative government will introduce legislation for stiff penalties of up to $20,000 for violating the Conflict of Interest Act. We will establish consequences for violations that do not currently have any, and we will ensure that these penalties are proportional to the severity of the violation and the seniority of the offender. This will deter future politicians from breaking ethics laws. Further, we will introduce a range of new measures to bring real accountability and transparency to government. We will increase the oversight powers of the lobbying and ethics commissioners to hold politicians to account. We will prohibit those charged with a criminal offense from lobbying for changes to laws that would impact their criminal proceeding. We will introduce legislative reforms to protect whistleblowers from retaliation, and we will close the loophole in the Conflict of Interest Act that allowed Bill Morneau to own shares in his private corporation through a numbered company while serving as a minister of the Crown.
New Democrat leader Jagmeet Singh is invoking the legacy of his venerated predecessor, hoping that the memory of Jack Layton, the principal architect of the NDP's best ever showing in a federal election, would help separate him from a pack of rivals wooing voters in Quebec.
I want to take a moment just to talk about being here at the park, Le Parc Jack Layton. It's an inspiration. Jack was someone that was able to win over the hearts of Canadians, win over the hearts of Quebecers. And he did that not just with his personality, which was pretty amazing, and not with just his ability to connect with people, but because of his values of fighting social injustice and to defend our planet and the environment. And we want to build on that. We want to build on that dream that Jack had to connect the progressives of Quebec with those across Canada and build a better future together. There is a lot that we've done in this campaign that was different than the previous campaign that shows how important we take the issues of Quebec. We announced a plan specifically for Quebec, something that Jack did and that we wanted to bring back that hadn't been done in a little bit of time. And so we wanted to bring that back, show Quebecers that not only we're going to fight for you, but we've got a specific plan that responds to unique things that matter to the people of Quebec, environmental evaluations, the rights to control culture, because culture is so important. So spending when it comes to the Quebec culture and music and arts, making sure that the federal money goes to allowing Quebec to basically to direct and to allocate those funds the way they see most appropriate, given Quebec's unique identity. I'm really proud of that. And so we've put forward a unique offer. We've got a lot of support. There's a base of support that exists, and we're going to build on that.
Turkey's foreign minister says the country will retaliate against any sanctions imposed against it over its military incursion into northeast Syria. In a speech to Parliament, Mevlut Cavusoglu says sanctions and threats will not affect Turkey's resolve and necessary steps will be taken. The United States has announced a limited set of sanctions on Turkey, and U.S. President Donald Trump warned he could obliterate Turkey's economy. French President Emmanuel Macron and German Chancellor Angela Merkel say they believe a Brexit deal is being finalized among negotiators in Brussels and could be adopted by the EU leaders tomorrow. The two expressed their optimism at a joint press conference in France ahead of a crucial EU summit. It's seen as the last chance to approve a divorce deal before Britain is scheduled to leave the bloc on October 31st. Well, it was a decent day in southern Alberta today, but later in the week we'll cool off a bit with some slightly below average temperatures. Complete weather details are coming right up. A few clouds tonight with a low of +5. For tomorrow, increasing cloudiness early in the morning, along with a west wind gusting from 40 to 60 and a high of 15. Friday, sunny and windy with a high of 12. Saturday, increasingly cloudy and 9 degrees, clearing on Sunday with a high of 10. Monday, a mix of sun and cloud and 11 degrees. For Tuesday, we should see partly cloudy skies and 12 degrees. Looking at the almanac, the average high for this time of year is 14 degrees with an average low of 0. Highest temperature on the state was recorded in 1963 at 27 degrees. Our record low, -11 in 1969. Sunrise was at 7:54 and sunset at 6:40 p.m. Well, let's see how tomorrow is shaping up across the country. Victoria and Vancouver will see some shower activity in 12 degrees. Clouds giving way to sunshine in the afternoon for Calgary, a high of 13. A mix of sun and cloud for Edmonton and 14. 15 and sunny for Regina. Partly cloudy and 17 for Saskatoon. Winnipeg will have another cool day, mainly cloudy tomorrow with a high of 8. A chance of showers and 11 for Toronto. Expect some rain and 10 degrees in Ottawa. For Montreal, bring your umbrella. They have a rainfall warning in effect with 20 to 30 millimeters coming down tomorrow with a high of 9. In the Maritimes, Fredericton, New Brunswick will also see rain and 11 degrees. In Halifax, Nova Scotia, residents are preparing for a storm, windy with 30 to 40 millimeters of rain expected, a high of 15. Charlottetown, PEI will also have some wind and rain tomorrow, 13 degrees. And for St. John's, Newfoundland, expect sunshine and 10 degrees for tomorrow. Canada's annual inflation rate held steady at 1.9% in September for the 7th straight month. Statistics Canada says price growth was once again restrained by a drop in gas prices, which were down 10% from a year earlier. Stephen Brown of Capital Economics says he expects inflation to gradually drift down towards 1.5% by early next year. Brown predicts signs of lower inflation and below potential economic growth in the coming months will encourage the Bank of Canada to cut interest rates in December. HEXO will launch a new 28-gram cannabis product in Quebec, priced about 20% lower than the cost at illegal dispensaries. The Quebec-based cannabis company says the product under the brand name Original Stash will sell for $125.70, taxes included, or $4.49 per gram. Statistics Canada's latest price analysis put the average cost of a gram of illegal weed at $5.59 per gram. HEXO says the product is aimed at undercutting the illicit market, and it's in discussions on pricing strategy in other provinces and territories. A tentative agreement has been reached between General Motors and the United Auto Workers, possibly ending a month-long strike that has closed the company's U.S. factories and hampered production in Canada and Mexico.
There's a tentative agreement, so that's a positive sign. Now, talks could still break down as far as I know. I don't know for sure, but the tentative does sound like it's better. People feel a lot happier, I think. They're glad to hear we're getting some action, and they said they're getting close. That's what they said this morning. They said we're getting close, and then it's probably like an hour and a half later, we heard that we had a tentative. So when the local presidents meet tomorrow, one of the things they'll vote on is whether or not we continue to picket and we vote on the tentative before we go back to work, which in previous years, we just went right back to work and then we voted after we got back to work. This is a big deal, obviously, this year, because it feels like we're fighting not just for us personally, but for the middle class in general.
The 49,000 striking workers are expected to stay on the picket lines for at least 2 more days as 2 union committees vote on the deal, which members will have to approve. Now here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up slightly today to 16,427. The Dow was down almost 23 points to 27,001. The Nasdaq was down almost 25 points to 8,124. The S&P 500 was down almost 6 points to 2,989. Oil was up 23 cents to $53.04 per barrel. Natural gas was down 5 cents to $2.29. Gold was down $2.08 to $1,488.10 per ounce. Silver was unchanged at $17.40. Wheat is at $219 per metric ton. Barley is at $218 per metric ton. Canola is at $460, and corn came in at $288 per metric ton. Live cattle were up $1.35 to $112.50. Feeder cattle were up 23 cents to $145.83. Lean hogs were down $1.35 to $112.50. The Canadian dollar was up slightly today to 75.77 cents US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, Alberta Health Services has declared an outbreak of whooping cough in parts of southern Alberta, including Lethbridge, Raymond, and the county of Lethbridge. Mental health is an increasing problem in our society. Hal Roberts had the opportunity to discuss this with psychologist and best-selling author Greg Jantz. That interview is straight ahead. But first, here's a look at what's happening in and around your community.
Here's your Bridge City News community calendar. The United Way Coats for Kids and Families campaign continues until October 31st, accepting new and gently used winter wear for families in need in the community. Accepted items include new or gently used coats, mittens, scarves, snow pants, snow boots, and new hats and toques. Items can be dropped off at United Way and any Lethbridge TD Canada Trust or ATB Financial Branch. For more information, call 403-327-1700. Come for an amazing time to the McNally Community Association's TEX-MEX FIESTA fundraiser on Saturday, October 19th at the McNally Community Center. The evening begins with dinner at 7 p.m., with entertainment at 8 and a barn dance at 8:30. Music provided by the Great Canadians Barn Dance Band. Plus, a silent auction and raffle draw will be taking place at the event. Tickets are $50 per person and can be purchased at Western Stockman. For more information, visit mcnallycommunity.ca. Men, young and old alike, are invited to come join the Lethbridge Christian Men's Choir. Practices are held every Thursday from 7:30 to 9 p.m. at Trinity Reformed Church. The choir practices are in preparation for Christmas and spring concerts, as well as occasional performances at the hospital and seniors' homes. For more information, call 403-328-7985. And that's your Bridge City News Community Calendar.
Today's world seems to be filled with so much stress and uncertainty, which is leaving more and more people struggling with both depression and anxiety. Today's guest has helped many people overcome both of those. Dr. Greg Jans is a psychologist, best-selling author, and founder of the Center, a Place of Hope, one of the top facilities for treatment of depression in the United States. One of his latest books is called Soul Care. Dr. Jans, welcome back to BCN.
Good to be with you for such an important topic.
Very much so. So many people around the world dealing with depression and anxiety. Our world has changed a lot over the past 30 years. Now, you believe we're living in a world of extremes. Can you elaborate?
Yeah, we do have extremes, and the World Health Organization says depression and anxiety now are topping the list. They're calling depression a disability. So when we talk about extremes, we're seeing such things as high levels of addiction, high levels of anxiety, and it's a real increase. In certain ages, we're seeing 12 to 17, especially high levels of depression and anxiety. And unfortunately, men ages about 50 and above is the second highest growing rate of depression and suicide.
So what impact do all of the negative news and hateful social media comments have on our mental state?
Okay, let's talk about social media. We know that if you're already a little bit depressed, a little bit anxious, the more time that you engage and spend online and social media, your symptoms all go up. In other words, you're going to be more isolated, not closer to others, going to have more depression and anxiety symptoms, not less. So social media, honestly, is not helping.
Yeah, Facebook, Twitter. I mean, you see a lot of Twitter trolls all the time, but it's interesting too. They're faceless, nameless. You know, they just create this profile and they become these keyboard warriors, blasting people all the time.
Well, we have something called digital courage.
Right.
People will do things online they won't do in person.
That's very true.
Yes.
Now, your book is about adopting some spiritual disciplines that will impact our physical and emotional well-being. What are some of those core disciplines?
Well, here's what we know. To live a life of recovery, Hal, we've got to develop these. I see it in the thousands of folks that we've worked with over the last 36 years. Here's what we know. You've got to do something to increase gratitude in your life. That's one of the disciplines. Gratitude. We know that gratitude, and when people come to us, they're depressed, they're anxious, as they move through the things that we're going to do with them, there's a threshold where they cross where we start to see like gratitude. They're humble. And with gratitude comes optimism. Optimism means I have a positive future. I can believe in my future. There's hope. So gratitude's really interesting because gratitude and anxiety, it's hard for those two to coexist. Think about it. Gratitude and depression, they just don't mix well together.
So is it really about counting your blessings, appreciating everything for what you have?
There is a counting your blessings, but gratitude is one of the components of hope. Now, hope comes when we have a plan. So if you're depressed or anxious, it's going to probably stay that way until we begin to build a plan. And then I can start to have optimism, some hope. So gratitude is very powerful. We know that gratitude as well with some of the studies shows that it will affect our body chemistry. Gratitude, much like individuals who develop a real good sense of being a forgiving person, forgiveness changes our chemistries.
Now, you've personally adopted some of these disciplines. How well have they worked for you so far?
Well, I really know that something happened in my life, and I did have a period of some real struggle with depression in my own life, and we all maybe have gone through that. But I know for me, one of the keys were I had to be humbled, teachable, and have gratitude, and really put a focus on some key relationships in my life.
Now, you refer to prayer as a very important discipline as well. Why is that?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Let's talk about prayer. People who spend time, and prayer can take maybe some different forms. For some, it could be very specific, very structured. Others, it's having a prayerful spirit. I think prayer also increases gratitude. So, prayer, I'm going to just say, is communication with God, and how we develop that. And for some, let's go, well, I don't really feel lovable. I don't feel like God loves me. Well, maybe what you're going to do is you're going to go out for that 20-minute walk. We're going to get some movement going. And how about walk in prayer, walk and talk to God, and just begin a conversation with God, developing a time, maybe a appropriate regular time where you go, okay, I'm just going to work on this in my life. See what happens.
So, how can we learn to stop talking at God and start maybe listening to God?
Isn't that interesting? A lot of folks that we work with, they're crying out to God, relieve me of this depression, take away this anxiety. And I understand the crying out. I understand the pain can be great. But one of the things you need to do is actually pray for wisdom. God, show me what I need to know. And Lord, help me listen to you. Where do I see you in this pain? So you've brought out, Hal, a really important point. Listening to God. Wow. Getting through all that static.
Listen to that still small voice, be still and know that I'm God. Now, you're right that gratitude fosters optimism and optimism fuels hope. Yet today we're surrounded by so much negativity. How do we tune that out?
Yeah, it's where we're going to put our point of focus. We live in a culture of a lot of just, news can feel overwhelming. And even, well, I don't even know what to believe. And we become overwhelmed because we're oversaturated. So, what are you saturating yourself with? I think there's a saturation of God's truth. Maybe when you go out for that walk, you're going to take a 3x5 card and maybe put down a verse. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Okay, and I'm going to remember that. I'm going to put a different point of focus. That doesn't mean I'm going to put my head in the sand from what's going on in the world, but my point of focus will be different. Maybe my point of focus is on service to others and giving to others, even when I'm not doing so well.
Now, you write about confession, Dr. Jans. Can you explain why confession is like an emotional and spiritual detox?
Yeah, emotional and spiritual detox, confession. Well, we know that one of the signs of emotional intelligence and being emotionally healthy is really a person who's not keeping a lot of secrets. And maybe there's shame, and maybe there's embarrassment, but we're at a place where we're not keeping a lot of toxic secrets. What I mean toxic is I'm isolated, I'm burdened by all these secrets. Maybe I'm involved with pornography, maybe I have secret drinking. So there's some secrets in my life that's actually making that depression and anxiety worse.
Now, you talk about how community is so vital to spiritual and emotional health, but on the flip side, isolation is one of the worst things we can do because no person is an island.
Here's what it's hard when you're depressed to say, okay, I'm going to reach out. It's hard to even think I'm going to be in relationship with anybody, but we do not recover in a vacuum. In other words, the more we isolate, the darker that it becomes. If you have anxiety, the more that you pull yourself away from people, the more anxiety symptoms you're going to have. It just works that way.
How does serving other people really help us in our own lives?
Yeah, serving others. Isn't that interesting? Well, if I serve others, it puts perspective on my own position, my own place. If I'm serving others, it also moves me out from being self-absorbed. Self-absorbed means I can't see beyond my own issues or my own suffering. And you know what? Something about serving others, reaching out, and really, I call it love and acceptance of others. It helps you give that to yourself as well.
Now, you're right that unforgiveness erodes the soul. It can damage our psyche and weaken our immune system. Why is forgiveness so hard for so many of us?
Forgiveness, because it's confusing. How can I forgive somebody who's maybe abused me? How can I forgive myself for all the mistakes I made? Because forgiveness for some is, well, then I'm saying it's okay. Well, no, we're not saying it's okay. For some, forgiveness is excusing. Forgiveness is really about setting ourselves free, and we've learned from whatever event it is. It's also setting a freedom inside that says, if I'm an initiator of forgiveness, I've allowed new peace to come in. If I don't forgive, I'm going to have a lack of peace, and I'm not going to trust. And you say, well, I can't trust others. Not anymore. But unforgiveness keeps us from developing close relationships. It robs us of intimacy.
Let's talk a bit more about peace and how important that is to our physical, emotional, and mental well-being.
Yeah, peace comes when I become an initiator of forgiveness. Peace comes when I'm willing to reach out to others. Peace, and you know what? We've heard it said, but wow, nothing's more valuable than having peace of mind. Well, unforgiveness robs us of peace of mind. Unforgiveness affects our sleep. So I just want to, I don't say it's easy, but let's practice and let's become an initiator of forgiveness. Be the first one to initiate forgiveness. This is something I've had to work on. And I know at times it doesn't seem fair, but if we go, well, it's not fair what they did to me. Well, you're right. But what purpose is it going to serve keeping you sick and in bondage to what somebody else did?
So how do negative emotions really sap our mental and physical strength?
Negative emotions not only are an emotional drain, but negative emotions are really something that comes at a time in our lives where it'll paralyze us and we won't be able to deal with anger. We will not be able to deal with fear in our lives and guilt. So think of those as the three deadly emotions: anger, fear, and guilt. You're not going to be able to manage those in your life. You're going to get more of them.
Is it important maybe sometimes we have to consider cutting some toxic people out of our lives?
Oh, I'm glad you asked that. There are people who are toxic in our lives. There are people who could be emotionally abusive. There are people that really they may be misusing you and they're oppressive. So I think there's a distance ourselves, but at times there's a decision that makes, I can no longer be in relationship with this person because it's so unhealthy.
What happens if it's a very close relative, like maybe mother or father? What do you do in that instance?
Okay, so maybe that's a season. Maybe there's a season where I'm pulling back some so that I can get healthier, so that I can get stronger in order to deal with that situation. Maybe I need to pull back in order to even forgive them. Maybe I need to, when I deal with them, never be alone. Maybe I need to put some safe parameters in place. You're right. There are people that, oh no, it's my relative. I'm going to see them. And all of a sudden you're feeling anxious, right? And you go, oh no, I'm already having a panic attack because I'm going to have to see so-and-so. And that's something we need to look at and go, okay, what's going on inside you? Have you not forgiven? Now, forgiveness doesn't imply that I have to be in relationship with them.
Let's talk about one of my favorite pastimes, laughter. Why is laughter so important to our overall well-being?
Laughter, and we put a little chapter of laughter in this little soul care book. And the reason why is laughter is one of the keys that keeps perspective in our life. It affects our body chemistry, and laughter can be bonding. When I laugh and share times of somebody in a humorous way, it can be bonding, and it can actually deepen that relationship. I think a lot of times marriages, we need to laugh more with our spouses. We get into routines and we, laughter increases joy, and we could use a little more joy. So let's laugh. It's okay.
Yeah, laughter is also good for burning a few calories. Now, what do you hope readers will take away from reading your book, Soul Care?
Oh, perspective. I hope that people get a sense of, okay, I can practice these. These aren't that hard to do. I think it's a time to make a decision and go, you know what? I want to be emotionally healthy. And I want to understand that my soul and my spirit are such an important part of my long-term emotional wellness.
Dr. Greg Jans is the author of Soul Care. Thanks a lot for joining me today from Washington State.
Good to be with you.
Life can sometimes be very harsh with unexpected difficulties and heartbreaks. And when your dreams get crushed, how on earth do you recover? Today's guest has an incredible story. Rick Unruh is a pastor, former prison inmate, and the founder of the Dream Again Counseling Center. He's also the author of a book called Self-Surrender, The Key to Dreaming Again. You can get a copy at rickunruh.net. Rick, thanks so much for joining us from Wichita, Kansas today.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Appreciate it.
Well, it's an amazing story, and I admire you for enduring through some incredibly difficult storms of life. Can you share with our viewers what exactly self-surrender is and why you decided to use that as the title for your book?
Well, if back up just to set that table just a little bit there, in 2001, we lost our 12-year-old son in an ATV accident out at my my dad's house, his grandfather's house. And, it was a long journey. Grieving is just a brutal thing to try to figure out. Everybody does it differently. There's no right, wrong with that. But I'd had a call. God had been in the ministry. It kind of slid out a little bit. And then we lose our son. That's raising a whole lot of questions about God. And was really trying to find my way. God, I feel the call reviving up inside of me again. But what does that look like? What does that mean? And I spent 18 months seeking God. What is my purpose? What is my plan? Because when you lose a child, you don't think you'll dream again because you're just numb on the inside. You're feeling your emotions. Why get excited about something? Because in the scope of what you've been through, what does that really matter? And 18 months of seeking God, I'm driving down the road one day, having that same conversation with God, and probably as close to an audible voice as I've ever heard. I've heard, "You haven't given me everything." And I'm like, "What are you talking about, God? We've pretty well lost everything. We've been through this crazy, with our son and jobs and all this stuff." And, what are you talking about? And he said to me, "You haven't given me your son." And I pull alongside the road. God, I kind of tucked that away in the corner. I've thrown the key away to that because there's a whole lot of questions I have about who you even are, God. Because how can you let a 12-year-old innocent child be taken before his time? And visually, and so this is the key, and this is the pivotal point of the book. Again, in the book, I'm leading all the way up, explaining much more detail to this point. But I'm sitting there, and I visually remember just picking up my lifeless son, and walking him to the foot of the cross and saying, "Here he is, God. Here's my greatest hurt in life. Here's my greatest wound. If you can take my son and use him for your glory, I'll do whatever you ask me to do." 18 months of complete silence and not knowing what my call was. Instantly alongside the road, God gave me the Dream Again name. He began to lay things out that he had for us. And so that's the point. Are we willing to surrender that deep, dark hurt, wound, that thing in our past that we don't want to go back to? Because God knew that was going to be a stumbling block if I didn't deal with it. So that was the key pivotal, self-surrender. And when we do that, God can begin to allow us to dream again.
Well, you've had multiple dreams crushed, it seems, up and down, right? I mean, you write that you found freedom in prison. Do you want to share a little bit about how you actually ended up there?
So we had, after lost our son and moved, kind of trying to, restart. I got in the mortgage industry, and I was with the mortgage investment group. And sometime, like 3 years later, we just opened the Dream Again Counseling Center. I'm on top of the world, everything we've been through. And finally, I understand God's purpose. I understand, God's going to allow me to speak into other people's lives. And 1 month after we opened that, I get a call from the FBI, and the mortgage investment group that I was involved with was deemed to be illegal. I'm offered a plea agreement, and I'm sentenced to 15 months in Yankton Federal Prison Camp in Yankton, South Dakota, going from somebody that's never been in trouble in their life to being in the ministry at times kind of faded out. And here I am reporting to prison. And it was just another devastating, because now I'm full of shame and embarrassment. How could God use a felon? how could God ever, I've just messed things up too bad to ever be used by God again.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's just a smash in the face, unexpected. What was the part of, again, spending, roughly a year in prison that had the biggest impact on you? And you did something for your family as well before you self-surrendered to prison there, right?
Yeah, so I knew I was going to be gone for a year. I missed some birthdays, all the holidays and stuff. So I did a special thing with my wife. We surprised her. We renewed our vows. Before I left, I stuck signs all over the house in drawers. Some they'd find right away, some they'd find months later, about miss you, love you guys. And then I pre-wrote out every birthday card, every anniversary card, and I sent them to my sister who kept them for me. And then on those dates, she would insert a gift card into those, and my family would get a card from me because I would not have the ability to do that that type of card from prison. So I said, how do I, make it special for them in the midst of this horrible situation that we're having to go through? So that was a key thing right there.
And then what had that big impact on you in prison? Obviously, there's a lot of things going on there through your mind, right?
Yeah. The biggest thing really is, sometimes there's that one defining moment. But for me, as I walked in and I'm dazed, I'm confused, I feel God can never use me again. I'm crushed. But in 2 Corinthians 7:5, we see Paul kind of the same way. Fear without, fear within, everywhere he goes. But it says he was comforted by the coming of Titus. So many times we think God's going to bring angels down to cover us. I'm not saying he doesn't by any means, but more times than not, he uses people to walk alongside us. And I saw that firsthand as every day I'm down and out thinking God could never use me. For the first 30 days I was in prison, every day I received 5 to 14 letters. Rick, we believe in you. God has a call from the church, family members. Don't you dare give up. God still has a plan. And so for me, it was 30 days of just day after day after day thinking, wow, maybe I can dream again. Maybe God's not finished with me yet.
Oh, that's incredible. And that kept on going right through the whole time you were in prison?
It kind of started fading out, but those first 30 days, again, I had people obviously, but it was a very organized effort on their part to make sure that I had this big boost in those first 30 days. So that was huge.
Well, I think it was Billy Graham who said, maybe I'm wrong on that one, but that pain is God's megaphone, or maybe it was C.S. Lewis. But, dark times in life, they happen. I'm not saying God puts them on us necessarily, but you know what? They happen. And, God gets our attention one way or the other, doesn't he?
Yes, he does. And that was, again, another where now you'd asked a question earlier, and I didn't quite get there. We found freedom in prison is that life is so busy and it's so crazy and it's go, 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 go. And the thing you learn in the prison is everything slows down. And now you got to face who you are. You can't go find all these distractions and stay busy. You've got to come face to face with who you are. And so God began to weed more things out of my life. And even in the midst of being in prison, I started understanding what true freedom in Christ was all about.
Okay. You write that the path to destruction is never really overnight, but rather more of a gradual decline. Do you want to explain that?
Yeah, I think everybody, when we see somebody fall or we think, wow, what happened overnight? And yet we know it wasn't overnight. It's those decisions prior and those things that were hiding in our heart, those things we're not willing to surrender to God. Things from the past, addictions, hurt, unforgiveness, all of these things become seeds that begin to grow into something bigger. And all of a sudden, one day we see somebody, walk or do something, walk from the faith or do something crazy, but it didn't happen yesterday. So, and I've often prayed this, we can look back and so many times see those things happening in our life once God kind of exposes them. And I often pray, Lord, help me walk in hindsight. Not living in the past, but help me see those things today that I'll look back at and say, wow, I wish I would have got rid of that because that was a seed that was planted. And so, Lord, help me daily see those things.
Yeah, that does make some sense. It doesn't just happen. There's something behind that. There's some roots behind that for sure. You use the term broken heart syndrome in the book. Is this referring to losing your son? I mean,
Yeah.
that's just, I've had a friend who's gone through that, actually a couple of friends who've gone through that. It's just, it just boggles my mind. I don't know how you get through that.
Yeah, it's actually, the word's actually takotsubo, which is something I stumbled across. It's an actual literal medical term for broken heart syndrome, and it's actually dealing with the heart and the stress, especially when you lose a loved one. And so that's kind of a phrase that I tag, because when you lose someone, yeah, you're brokenhearted. I mean, you wonder how you're going to keep on going. You wonder, life no longer makes sense like it used to. And as you walk close with your friends that have lost children, it literally breaks your heart. C.S. Lewis refers to losing a loved one as an amputation. And that's really what a broken heart, the amputation, part of you is gone. And that's a devastating blow to try to come to terms with.
Yeah, absolutely. Talk to us a little bit about fear. Why do we only fear the future, but we don't fear the past? It's an interesting thought to ponder.
Yeah, again, it kind of makes sense, but yet we kind of don't think about it. I don't live in fear of what happened, in the past. At that moment, I might have, but it's always about fear of tomorrow and fear. And it was important to address fear in the book, because fear will stop us from living our dreams. Fear will stop us from dreaming again. It is the one obstacle with that. So we're always looking ahead, fearing the future. And I say we can look back and so many times see God's hand walking us through each and every step. Even when we had fear at those moments, we see God's hands at work, but sometimes we struggle with seeing it tomorrow. And so, fear is always about stopping us from living that dream, from going to that next step. And so I want people to realize that that's a natural thing, but faith and fear are always going to be at odds with each other.
Oh, for sure, yeah. And you talk about, even how you felt, right? You're embarrassed, you're ashamed, right? So what do you say to people watching who have failed, and we've all have failed at different things, me too, but they feel I'm an embarrassing failure, so how can I possibly be used for any kind of future ministry? What do you say to people like that?
That again, I was right in your shoes, and I had the ability just a few months ago, after 8 years of being out, to walk right back into Yankton Federal Prison Camp and preach in chapel. And I sat in that very seat. I know the shame and the hopelessness, the family issues that you're having. I understand all of these things. And in the midst of that, if we will surrender to God, surrender those hurts that, as I walked into prison, I said these prophetic words. I was told to self-surrender to Yankton. I walked in and said, I'm Rick Enrer, and I'm here to self-surrender. Little did I know that that's what that journey would be about. Willing to surrender my pride, that, I don't want people to know that I've, messed up, and the shame, and just give it to God. So, all right, God, if you can use that for your glory, my son, my failure, my prison time, I'll go back in and speak to prisons. I'll do whatever. If I can surrender that to you, God begins to allow us to dream again.
Yeah, boy, that is just, easier said than done. But, okay. Well, you talked about fear a little bit. Just briefly, can you tell us a little bit about control? You call it the enemy of faith. So control, fear and control, they often go hand in hand, don't they?
They do. Yeah, it's really kind of. But again, the ultimate goal of fear and control is to stop you from living out God's plan for your life, because I want to control things. After I got out of prison, I was on staff at a very nice church in Wichita. God was laying on my heart to leave, and it was so hard because I didn't know what the future held. So there's this fear. Things were out of control now. I didn't get to dictate my daily schedule. I was leaving a great position to leap out in total faith to tell people about Dream Again. And that fear of not having control, again, like you said, they're very closely associated. I don't know where money's coming from. I can't work just overtime to make some extra money. I'm totally stepping out in faith to believe you. And it's an exciting time, a scary time. But if we can let go of control, if we can surrender and say, all right, God, I'm really not in control as much as I think I am, but I'm going to give it to you and move forward.
What do you hope readers will take away from reading your story?
You know, I've said it, if one person can turn themselves around, if one person can, gain hope, if they're sitting there thinking God can't use me, I might as well end my life, I might as well, all these things, if one person can turn that around and say, you know what, I'm going to trust God to do.
So after all that, do you still say and really believe God is good all the time?
Yeah, at the time, we easily say that, but, immediately after I lost my son, did I say that? No. Do I look back and see that he is good and he was there with me? Yes, he was. And so sometimes I think we feel guilty because maybe we can't say it every day in every circumstance. But I think when we look back, we do see God's hand there. And I can say that with confidence. God is good.
Wow. Thanks for sharing your story, Rick. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's great meeting you.
Yeah, absolutely. Wow. Rick Unruh, author of Self-Surrender, The Key to Dreaming Again. You can get a copy of this fascinating story, rickunruh.net. All right. Thank you for watching. On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, thank you.